The Arizona Coyotes have a new arena and they are continuing their rebuild. Robyn Leano, the co-host of Locked On Coyotes, joins us to discuss that and the Coyotes' prospects for the upcoming season.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, so glad to be with you on this Monday as we talk all things NHL. And thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Coyotes, Robyn Leano. Robyn, been an interesting offseason out in Arizona. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's start with the arena, the Mullet Arena, if I'm not mistaken. How did they end up with that name, and how is this going to work playing in such a small facility?
Yeah, so the name actually came from the family that essentially provided the biggest donation to the Mullet family. They provided the biggest donation to Arizona State to make this arena possible. And I mean, it makes sense for anyone who has ever been a part of a university campus and understands university donations, university buildings, know that generally buildings get named after their biggest donors,
Right.
or like sometimes maybe in rare instances it's like, oh, a memorial somebody who passed away before this thing, but before this thing got erected. So yeah, it was really just the whole family situation. But going to how this is going to work, because it's going to be interesting. It's a small arena for darn sure. um we're I've been seeing pictures and images of it. I mean, it looks great. It looks awesome, actually. But obviously, yes, it's a small arena. Everyone's going to talk about how, quote, embarrassing it is. The Coyotes are going to be in an arena that seats less than 5,000 people. But you know what, Gail? Like, I'm actually kind of looking forward to something like this because, like, it's a more intimate setting. It's going to be loud as hell. It's going to, like, for sure it's going to be packed every day. And like, you know, how often are people going to be able to say that you watched an NHL game in a venue like that?
Right.
Like, it's not going to happen very much, very, very often, if that much at all.
The people who actually do get to go to these games will probably enjoy it immensely, being that close to the ice, that close to the players. It probably will be one heck of an experience.
Oh, absolutely. And there's going to be like no sightline problems at all.
Right.
Again, being that close, obviously, every person who's paying a ticket for this, they're paying a pretty hefty price tag because demand's going to be significantly up. And that goes in the fact that they're in the right area. I've mentioned this before. Now they're at Arizona State, which is in Tempe, which is in the East Valley. I've been trying to advocate for the Coyotes moving to the East Valley for years since I moved here to Arizona. I'm like, yeah, there's not much in the West. Move it to the East Valley. That's where everything is. And I mean, and it's going to show. It's going to show how high the demand are when single game tickets go up.
So let's talk a little bit about the team itself. We know they're still in a rebuild. What moves have they made this offseason that are cause for optimism?
I mean, I think the biggest moves are moves that players we're really not really going to see too much in the next year.
Right.
And that's what they did at the draft. They drafted Logan Cooley. They drafted Connor Geeky. They drafted Maverick Lamoureux. Those three players in just the first round. Obviously, Cooley being the big ticket. We've talked with multiple people, and everyone says Cooley is the guy. Like, you are going to love him. He's going to be amazing to watch, and he's going to be playing at the University of Minnesota next year, which obviously, no need to worry, because the Coyotes, we've been saying they don't need to rush their prospects. I also advocate to the Coyotes fans because University of Minnesota is going to be visiting Arizona when they play Arizona State, so it's going to make it a little bit fun on that one. But yeah, these players are going to be on that setting. They're going to still keep an heavily eye on Dylan Gunther, who is, their top prospect, their top draft pick in the previous draft. And it's really all about the development. When it comes to rebuilding, it's like, yeah, the team on the ice this year, it's not going to be good. Yeah, they might have picked up, like Troy Stetcher and a few other players, but like other than that, like it's really just like not much else to look at.
So on the ice, it'll probably be another difficult season.
It's going to be another significantly difficult season because the Coyotes still don't know who's going to be a true starting or backup goaltender. Obviously, Karel Vejmelka is going to be one of them. He's going to be one of the tandem, but we don't know the other. There's still a lot of like question marks, and we're in September now. Like we don't know what's going to happen. Do I have a lot of faith in Karel Vejmelka? I mean, I think he can do well as a Coyotes goaltender. I mean, he's had 5 or however many games this last season, having saved 45 plus saves, 45 plus shots in a single game. And I think a lot of that has to deal with how good of a tandem he has right next to him. This last year he had Scott Wedgwood. He doesn't have Scott Wedgwood this year.
Right.
Who the Coyotes put next to him is really going to tell how Karel Vejmelka is going to develop, and that's their future goaltender right there.
Who are some of the other players who this team will be counting on over the course of this season?
Well, it goes without saying, Clayton Keller is going to be a massive person to watch out for. He had a huge emergence last year. He looked so impressive. He had, after several other seasons of looking lackluster, looking like he didn't play up to his contract. And this last year's like, oh, now we know what he's capable of. He got injured towards the end of last year, and it looks like he's recovering pretty well. So how he plays this next year, everyone's gonna be watching because everyone's gonna be like, all right, what's the future captain gonna do? And so, I mean, that's what it's gonna be. That's what it's gonna be like on that side. And obviously, Nick Schmaltz and Lawson Krause is gonna be probably a pretty good microscope on there. And of course, with the microscope on Jacob Chikrin, because there's the question mark of, are the Coyotes going to trade him? It seems like he's going to start the year with the Coyotes, but there's a very well likelihood that he's probably going to get moved by the trade deadline, depending on how he looks during the season and everything like that. Because that's been the heavy topic over the last, I don't know, 7 months now.
Yeah. It should be interesting to see how this all plays out over the course of the season. But again, hopefully from a Coyotes perspective, they're building towards something. And that is obviously the key. Robyn, why don't you let our viewers and our listeners know where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find the podcast, pretty much everywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify. I also found out that those Arizona-based listeners. If you are a fan of the of 12 News, our podcast is found on their app as well on their mobile devices. On social media, we're on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano.
All right, Robyn, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thanks, Gil.
If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you are depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Ready? Delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite. Cookie dough chunk puffs have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassles of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein. And like all Built Bars, cookie dough chunk puffs covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. So good. And what's great about Built is that all their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKEDON15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off at Built.com.